The most ridiculous person in the world is the know-all who picks up a smattering of hearsay knowledge and proclaims himself the world's number one authority. This merely shows that he has not taken a proper measure of himself. Knowledge is a matter of science, and no dishonesty or conceit whatsoever is permissible. What is required is definitely the reverse: honesty and modesty. If you want knowledge, you must take part in the practice of changing reality. If you want to know the taste of a pear, you must change the pear by eating it yourself. If you want to know the structure and the properties of the atom, you must make physical and chemical experiments to change the state of the atom. If you want to know the theory and methods of revolution, you must take part in revolution. All genuine knowledge originates in direct experience.
Unlimited Genocide on Podcasters, Mao 1937. Welcome back to Workers Lit, y'all. Your favorite podcast about practice.
Is it? It's about practice. We're always practicing.
Folks, we have a third voice on the podcast today, not our usual third voice. A while back, we did Who Paid the Pipers of Western Marxism, and Rae from ProlesPod was on deck to help us navigate that crazy-making, like groundbreaking text. And we are here to navigate another text with them. Less crazy-making, arguably even more groundbreaking. That text is on Practice by Mao Zedong, and again, the person is Rae of ProlesPod. Rae, welcome back! How are you doing?
Oh my gosh, hi! I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. It's a delight.
No, I'm super excited to do this. This one is not a long one. I'm going to link it in the show notes below. So, listeners, if you want to read it before we talk about it, that's perfectly valid. If not, that's also valid. But it is a pretty quick one. You can listen to it. There's an audio version as well. I'll link that takes 30 minutes. It's more of an essay than a book, but there is plenty to say about it. It is deeply foundational to a lot of Marxism, modern Marxism, and definitely foundational to Maoism and Chinese communism and socialist practice, but influential beyond that as well. So, worth engaging with, and I think quite relevant for our times.
Yeah, the as far as us engaging with the text goes, this dates back a couple of months at this point. Rae, you and I were talking about going through a few Mao texts. This one on contradiction and on the correct handling of contradictions among the people. So this, unless
the Holy Trinity.
Yes. So unless I'm not mistaken, this is going to be the first of a handful of episodes. I think.
Yeah, I hope so. Although, ironically, this is not the first one that is written.
No.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it was.
We're starting in the middle. We're doing a little bit of in medias res.
A very good place to start. You get a little bit of the previous context. You get a little bit of prediction of what comes after. I think more books should start in the middle.
I think I think that, and I also think that, folks, if you don't listen to ProlesPod already, you should put ProlesPod in your rotation. And I believe we'll be discussing more of the Mao's work on ProlesPod. So if you want to hear more Workers Lit voices, that is a place to go and listen. I will also link that in the show notes. Mao first, and then ProlesPod just right below.
Yes, ProlesPod, with whom we are. With whom I'm working a little bit more closely these days, because we've just put out, it is the 1st of July when we go to record. The first 3 episodes of our new podcast, Half the Sky, has just dropped. Rae, you're on it. Jen Big Nasty of our show and How the Red Was Won is on it. I am on it. We got Luna Oi. We got Revolutionary Thought. It is a grand old time, and y'all should go listen to it right now.
And what better text for us to read than a text by Mao, who gave us the title of our show?
Mao famously said, "Women hold up half the sky, non-binary people hold up 20% of the sky, and men hold up the last 30%." Is my understanding of how he explained that.
Yeah, but it's the easiest 30%.
The non-binary people are doing a disproportionate amount considering their percentage of the population. That's no
That's
knock
true.
that it's just 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
The
shout
general
out.
population and also the population of our podcast listenership.
Our podcast listenership is crazy disproportionate non-binary. We've thrown that out before, but every time I look at the stats, I'm like, this cannot be statistically possible.
Yeah,
We love it.
I'm constantly shouting out y'all. Y'all are wonderful.
Let's get
what
into
else
it.
Is wonderful? Yeah, what else is wonderful is On Practice by Mao Zedong. And the full title here is On Practice, on the relation between knowledge and practice, between knowing and doing. And I just want to point out the title of our record here is Mao's Touch Grass, and that's pretty much what it is, right? He's laying out some themes. He's expanding on some themes he's laid out a few years earlier in Opposed Book Worship. That's where no investigation, no right to speak comes from. And this basically amounts to, okay, do your fucking research in the real world. You know, operating exclusively by the book is counter-revolutionary, right? So his thesis here, a revolutionary movement has to possess correct knowledge in order to succeed. How? So this is part of a lecture series Mao gives in 1937, presented at the Anti-Japanese Military and Political College in Yunnan. A year and change after the Long March is when this takes place. So at this time, the Red Army, the Communist Party of China, are recovering from a heavy defeat by nationalist Chinese forces led by Chiang Kai-shek. So Mao is like, okay, those guys aside, what did we, the party, and our leadership do wrong, right? And he identifies subjectivism as the fundamental flaw in the party's thinking that partially contributed to their defeat. There's two components to this. So the first is dogmatism. If you're a dogmatic Marxist, you treat Marxism as gospel. You apply what you've read in books to your conditions, irrespective of whether you've studied them. And every Marxist figure accounted for literally everything and is totally infallible. The second component of subjectivism here is empiricism. Basically the opposite. If you're an empiricist, you work within your own narrow experience. If you don't put your work in the context of the greater revolutionary project, and what these things have in common is they ignore the dialectical relationship between knowing and doing. So he's riffing a little bit on Marx's writing on Feuerbach here, right? The philosophers have only interpreted the world. The point is to change it. Is there any important context, y'all, that I'm leaving out that give rise to this text?
I mean, for folks that maybe don't know, I mean, this is a period of prolonged struggle towards revolution. Lenore touched on that, but like this is a period where the Chinese Revolution is both underway. I mean, it's a thing that goes on. It's not like the Bolshevik Revolution where it's kind of a matter of you have the February Revolution a few months and then you have this period of days where it's a takeover. It is this sort of long gaining and losing territory struggle, civil war, base building. It is much more prolonged. I mean, there's kind of a break in there for a war with Japan. It's a very long and complicated period. Maybe we'll cover what's his name, Red Star over China at some point.
Yeah.
Well, the Snow guy, I forget his name.
Edgar Snow, yeah.
Edgar Snow, yeah, the white guy that went to China was like, this rules.
We should do the Long Revolution as well.
So that would be a worthwhile, that's a worthwhile thing to know. Is this is being written very much not from comfort. It is being written very much from the heat and crucible of the struggle. Rae, is there any other context you want to add there?
I think it's maybe worth noting for listeners to just keep in mind that what we're examining as we enter this piece is we're trying to do we're doing an epistemology here, everyone. We're doing a Marxist epistemology. And I totally understand. I also just have a degree in acting. So if you don't know what that word means, it just means how do we know what we know? And he's building off of previous writing. Obviously, Lenin wrote about this. Stalin also wrote about this, where it's essentially setting you up to understand that if you live within class society, which he is going to bring up in this piece, the ruling class is going to be able to dictate who gets to access what kind of knowledge and how knowledge is produced. So just keep in mind that that's kind of the place that he's coming from, and what he's kind of trying to say is how do you know what you know? How do we make decisions collectively? And how does practice or action inform our ability to make correct decisions and to theorize appropriately?
One more thing I wanted to throw out is I know we have a very multi-tendency audience. We have a lot of people coming from a lot of perspectives that feel different types of way about different types of things. Uh, I think we have never been very shy about our perspective and how we feel about things, and we still appreciate those of you that aren't Marxist Leninists listening to the show, and shout out, and we appreciate you. I think this is a text that, even if you have some issues or theoretical disagreements with Maoism more broadly, uh, is still extremely useful and extremely practical in day-to-day organizing and understanding. So I also want to I don't want people to be automatically turned off because, oh, I don't identify this type of way or that type of way. Let's like put that aside for a minute and like engage with what we can get out of this text. Because, like it or not, what happened afterwards, they fucking beat Japanese imperialism and then beat
Sure.
an imperialist back nationalist government. That was an impressive thing to do. So we should learn from their tactical skills and the framework. So I wanted to throw that out as well, just to, as sort of a shout out to those of y'all that may not have a totally in line perspective with some of the things we think, but I think this will still be quite useful for y'all.
Mao's writing on contradiction is appropriate everywhere. I'm not
Yeah.
joking. If you're having a conflict in your romantic relationships, read Mao's writing on contradictions and on practice. Like, read this trilogy of writing. It's so foundational to understand the totality of complex situations when you are in the midst of them.
So, complex situations, yes, such as, so Mao, we touched on a little bit on how class society governs how information is shared and how people receive it. Mao, of course, initially points out, okay, production is by no means the only influence on human consciousness. Your relationship to the means of production is, one of many. You have politics, science, artistry that govern your perception of things. But, and he goes on to say, in class society, everyone lives as a member of a particular class. Every kind of thinking, without exception, is stamped with the brand of a class. That is the one thing everybody has in common. And it's this greater, it's the greater ability, it's the increase in literacy, it's the greater ability to disseminate information that we get with sort of the rise of industrial capitalism, that enables the proletariats to go from this stage of perceptual struggle and perceptual knowledge, recognizing their immediate conditions and struggling against them to improve them. It is this epoch of history in which we see working people go from that to a more conceptual frame of knowledge, and that's what he's sort of setting up here. Is that, okay? You have a process by which your knowledge develops. You have your immediate conditions, and then you have the larger context in which they exist.
And Lenore, you wrote down a quote here. Maybe we should read it off directly.
For a very long period in history, men were necessarily confined to a one-sided understanding of the history of society because, for one thing, the bias of the exploiting classes always distorted history, and for another, the small scale of production limited man's outlook. It was not until the modern proletariat emerged, along with immense forces of production, large-scale industry, that man was able to acquire a comprehensive historical understanding of the development of society and turn this knowledge into a science, the science of Marxism.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where Mao gets into the stages of cognition. First, your perceptual, spontaneous, like machine smashing struggle stage. That's where we're currently at, I think, barely.
Right.
And
Where there's spontaneous actions that are trying to produce one single result, that people of a class have some sort of awareness that they're a part of something. Maybe billionaires question mark are bad, maybe it's oligarchs question mark, I'm not entirely sure, and that they're doing this action to sort of get at them maybe, but it's not really a part of a collectivized broad struggle that has intentions and long-term goals as well as metrics to assess where you are on that path. So I agree with you that at least the West is in that, and a lot of places in the world as well, but especially the West is sort of in that area of class burgeoning consciousness.
Right. Not to discount the organizing work that's happening right now on like small scales, but we are still definitely in the stage of, oh, this one guy shot a CEO, this one guy burns down a data center. Isn't that really cool? It is really cool.
The guy that set fire to the toilet paper factory was still one of the craziest things I've ever seen. But it's obviously a step in a direction of, okay, people are coming to a consciousness. We're going to start throwing around terms like Epstein class. We're going to start whatever. We're going to start being like, oh, well, what kind of politicians do we want to back? It's a it's a building understanding of what is going on. You're starting to be aware of your relative position in society, but you're not quite all the way there. And it's also it's worth noting. So then it is the job of people that are trying to educate themselves, people who are organizers, to try to bring people along into that, but also people through their own experience of exploitation and struggle against exploitation. Mao is saying are going to start to, through practice, come into some of that knowledge themselves. Though, of course, it is good for there to be organizations to help them along.
And for the people who are engaging in these more spontaneous, small scale actions, they will also achieve a higher grade of consciousness, hopefully. I don't know. I'll be honest with you guys. I've been having a rough couple days. I'm sickly and frail. But as I was reading this text, on one hand, that was my first thought, is that these people will take these actions and they will realize, oh, these like small scale isolated incidents are impactful, but they're only minimally impactful. And maybe we should organize and we should create something larger. However, at least what I am seeing from my very like Eeyore mindset in the last couple of days, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that people engage in these actions and what they take away is the forces that we are fighting are too strong and there's really very little I can do. And maybe I'll just like sit this one out.
That also gets into an interesting thing that Mao was not able to talk about because he lived back then, of the society of spectacle stuff that emerges later. I'm reading some for a project I'm working on, reading some Frederick Jameson right now, and postmodernism, all that business and complicated stuff that we can't get into. But the fact of the matter is, yes, there is also that element of sometimes consciousness is even raised and people see stuff, but that doesn't necessarily lead them to action. If they're not led to action, they are not led to further knowledge of what needs to be done and how to work with people, which is also part of the point. You can't just engage with this through the internet. You can't just engage with this through reading. I mean, everyone has their own ways of engaging with things and their own limitations, but it has to be more. If you want to have a higher phase of level of understanding, it has to be more and deeper than just this. Oh, I'm like, I don't know, I'm a human Wikipedia that can just like spout out facts. And I'm talking to me right now too, to be very clear.
I
I
was
am
like,
not
shots fired at my
yeah,
face.
I am not. I am talking to Jacob as much as anyone here. And Mao is talking to all of us. That's why this is such a fucking relevant text. Let's see, Lenore, where do you want to take it next? You made the outline here.
Yeah,
So what
a fall into the pit again in your wits sort of is summing up what he's saying initially here. Your knowledge is verified only when you act and you achieve the results you anticipate. And in order to make this happen, achieving the anticipated results, you have to have your subjective ideas correspond with your objective conditions. How do you make that happen? Practice, right? It's only through practice you can determine the rightness of your theory.
Can I just say I love whoever's doing these English translations and making these like rhymes and little clever things. I think that's so fun.
I would love. We're gonna get a message from our friend in Hong Kong saying, "Hey, you should read this in the original Mandarin."
Yeah, Ray, if you don't know this, we have a friend in Hong Kong, a listener in Hong Kong, who has, when we cover Three Body Problems, said, cover it in the original Mandarin. And I love to we love to reference that guy. He's my favorite guy. Just so you know, we will not be doing that. Listener that's
Shout out,
started us in
homie.
Hong
I
Kong.
have been studying Vietnamese for 5 years, and God bless me on that. I will not be starting Mandarin Chinese. Probably not in this life. Probably not in this embodied life. If there's extra lives, I'll come back and I'll start then.
Yeah, if you prestige, you New Game Plus,
yeah, send a one up, send a green mushroom to the Patreon.
Yeah, listener in Hong Kong, you probably know more about this than us. Sorry.
No, this incidentally, we mentioned this on the imperialism record the other day. This is why Marx didn't account for like XYZ, because the relevant practice was lacking, right? Lenin and Stalin had to work out their theories because they took part in class struggle and experimentation.
Except for like dead ass, most of the time Marx did account for it. People just don't read, and so
that is also true. It's kind of shocking. It's like Marx failed to account for Nintendo, and it's like he kind of did though. Like he kind of did be like, actually, they can buy you off with like the upper strata of the working class, and he kind of does nail some of that. There's specifics of imperialism that he's not able to identify because he's not living in that period yet. But he did kind of predict that a lot of it was going to happen. Marx failed to account for the Workers Lit podcast. Is that true? Sound off in the comments.
No, it's in the Grundrisse. He
That'd be
says it by
crazy. We
name.
open it up. He's like, one day there'll be a podcast called The Social Shelf that then changes its name to the Workers Lit Podcast.
So most of our knowledge, of course, comes from indirect experience, because and Mao says specifically that like you can directly experience knowledge from like past times and foreign lands. Um, there has to be a degree of scientific abstraction by which somebody with direct experience has sussed it out and passed it along. But either way, what he establishes early on is okay. There's two parts to knowledge: direct experience and indirect experience, and the latter necessarily follows from the former.
Oh, and also for anyone who's reading this, kind of an interesting quirk that the Hong Kong listener sent me a message to let me know. Um, in the Chinese language, at least to the best of my understanding, when you're talking about time, linear time, it is in a way opposite to the way that we speak about it in English. So in the Chinese language, you are facing the past, and therefore you can only move backward into the future. The reason for this is that you only know your past, so that must be the direction that you're facing, and that we all sort of move backward into the future. And I just say that for anyone who really would like to pick up this text and give it a read. There are some of the sentence structures that are inverted in such a way that the Western mind, I think, struggles to comprehend what he's saying, like which is the affected and which is affecting. And so it may help you to approach this text if you keep that in mind.
Exactly, exactly. So it's only when the data of perception are very rich, not fragmentary, he says, and they correspond to reality, they're not illusory, that your data can be the basis for forming correct concepts and theories. If you've read opposed book worship, you recognize this as no investigation, no right to speak, with a little wordier, a little more adapted to the context of this text, right? And there's a dichotomy at play that he lays out in various forms here: rational versus perceptual knowledge, perceptual versus conceptual. Right? You have to perceive first your surroundings, your objective reality, and from there you can move on to the greater context that it exists within.
Yeah, he gives us a sort of nice quote. Knowledge begins with experience. Okay, so knowledge begins with experience. This is the materialism of the theory of knowledge. The second point is that knowledge needs to be deepened, that the perceptual stage of knowledge needs to be developed to the rational stage. This is the dialectics of the theory of knowledge, right? And one of the examples that he gives in the piece is like if you travel to somewhere new, he's using Yan'an where he's giving this speech, but if you travel to somewhere new, when you first arrive, you may notice very simple surface level things. You notice the terrain, you notice the weather, you notice the kind of clothes that people wear, you notice maybe people's facial expression when they look at you, you notice the food and how it's different to the food with which you're familiar. But you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the analytical ability to give any kind of context, to draw any kind of theory or analysis, deeper analysis from the things that you've seen. It is only through time and through continuing to have experience that quantitative bits of information, that the quantitative bits of information become a qualitative shift in your ability to have a deeper understanding of exactly what it is that you're looking at, right? Anybody who's ever traveled anywhere, you just have the perceptions of where you come from. And then when you're there, whether you have a positive experience or a negative experience, the touch points that you have, the knowledge that you have is only resonant with what you already know. You need to pick up more data through experience, through direct experience when you can, in order to then begin to understand deeper things about the culture of the place that you're in, right?
Hmm hmm
Yeah, for
Exactly.
example, you might be traveling and you go to Milledgeville, Georgia, and at first you're like, wow, this is the greatest town I've ever seen in my entire life. Everything is really cool here. But then you might find out that people don't like it when you wear like a crop top and they hate gay people there. That you are there learning. I mean, I'm kind of making a joke, but that is a genuinely like that is a genuine a thing. Like you're developing. Right. Mm,
Precisely.
That is the best way of putting my college experience in Milledgeville, Georgia. Thank you. No, it was. I
Yeah.
had a great time. It was fine. I have the luck of being bigger than everybody, so it's fine.
Yeah, big as a weapon, certainly. Like,
It
and
is. Sometimes it has to be.
It's not to discount entirely like sense perception. Of course, he describes it thus: like the rational is reliable precisely because it has its source in sense perceptions. Otherwise, it would be like water without a source, a tree without roots, subjective, self-engendered, and unreliable. And it's just like your first impression is going to be your first impression, no matter what. But it needs to be deepened. He says to think that knowledge can stop at the lower perceptual stage, and that perceptual knowledge alone is reliable, while rational knowledge is not, would be to repeat the historical error of empiricism. This is the second sort of version of the dichotomy he introduces: rationalism versus empiricism. We kind of danced around it in our dispossessed episode, when we were talking about the little bit where Aisha completely schools me on Zeno's paradox.
You got a little bit owned, yeah.
No, 100%, 100%. Fully to reflect a thing in its totality, to reflect its essence, to reflect its inherent laws, it is necessary through the exercise of thought to reconstruct the rich data of sense perception, discarding the dross, selecting the essential, eliminating the false, retaining the true, proceeding from the one to the other and from the outside to the inside in order to form a system of concepts and theories. That's your leap from the perceptual to the rational. He has a little bit of historical context here. From the In the historical Chinese context, he gives the Taiping Rebellion, the Yihutuan movement, which is their name for the Boxer Rebellion. You have these anti-foreigner movements, which kicked off for a very good reason, but weren't in the larger context of anti-imperialism, weren't necessarily guided by a greater consciousness that, imperialist forces have allied themselves with our comprador and feudal classes. We need to kick those guys' asses.
Well, Mao failed to consider that guy might have actually been Jesus's brother in the Taiping Rebellion, but
Shit.
There has to be an alternate history novel where like that is actually the case, and the Kingdom of Heavenly Peace succeeded.
Yeah, presumably that's been written in China, right? That would be the place that probably exists. Chinese listeners sound off. I wanted to add that a less silly example than the Milledgeville example, though I do think it holds. If you have the Marxist theoretical understanding of, say, what unions do, they're working class organizations, right? They're working class organizations that fight for people's rights as workers. Okay. You can know that. You can understand that. You can understand that there may be complications, but you can know people have an interest in striking or organizing or fighting back to get better wages and better working conditions. You can know that in your head. If you then go to the picket line, especially as not a member of that union, there are going to be unique conditions on the ground that are specific to that particular struggle, that particular political struggle, those particular interpersonal struggles, that particular situation in general. And when you go there, you can't just bring your Marxist knowledge of working class oppression. You also have to be willing to hear from those people their unique conditions, understand the unique things on the ground. For example, when there was the United Auto Workers strike, and Lenore and I both were involved in supporting the local United Auto Workers here in Atlanta, there were people like, actually, our boss here is quite sympathetic, so we're not chanting specifically against our boss. We have these feelings on it, and then for us, then that we have to take a unique stance in how we're talking to people and sharing theory, and also not being fucking weird, being a normal human being that can talk to people, things like that. That is also an important part of the struggle. So there needs to be that like higher level knowledge. Okay, I have the book shit, I have the theoretical shit, but also there is struggle meeting the real world. And if your theory is good, it will be in some ways applicable to the real world, as Marxist theory is to union struggles and whatnot. But you also have to, it actually has to be able to hit the road. I highly recommend people go back and listen to our episode with Jonathan Melrod on fighting times and how he applied Marxism to create a caucus in the United Auto Workers and defeat the corruption that was really rampant there in the late 20th century. Really great, and principled episode from friend of the pod, Jonathan Melrod. I think that's a great example of it.
And
Also
emphasize.
identifies as a Maoist, so makes sense that he knows that.
Yeah, he's like, okay, like I'm coming up like during the anti-war struggle here in the United States. Right around that time, I'm hearing about like I being John Melrod, I'm hearing about all the stuff going on in China right now, roughly contemporaneous, I think, with the Cultural Revolution. And he's like, well, okay, Mao, you seem to have figured it out thus far. I'm gonna write to Beijing, and I'm gonna ask you like, okay, so what can I do here? What advice do you have
Yeah,
for me here?
17-year-old from the United States in high school just writes a letter and like maybe Mao will read it.
And like months later, he gets like his complete works like mailed back to him in the States. Somebody in Beijing read it.
It's so sick. I fucking love that. And yeah, dedicated Maoist organizer to this day as a result of that.
But yeah, and Mao sort of sums up the necessity for experience and for open mindedness thusly. Only those who are subjective, one sided, and superficial in their approach to problems will smugly issue orders or directives the moment they arrive on the scene, without considering their circumstances, without viewing things in their totality, their history, their present state as a whole, and without getting to the essence of things, their nature, and the internal relations between one thing and another. Such
I
people
have
are
a
bound to
question
trip and
about
fall.
this.
Yes,
I'm so sorry. I'm so
you're
sorry
good. You're good.
to interrupt you while you're tripping and falling.
No.
I have a question about this.
Mhm,
So, as a materialist, right? Like often
mhm.
when I hear the word essence, and maybe this is like a thing in translation, we should be reading the original Mandarin. Um, but when I hear the word essence, it has sort of like metaphysical connotations to me. Is Mao saying, like in this instance, is Mao just saying essence is synonymous with totality, but also essence is mutable? Like,
I, I
surely he thinks essence is mutable.
I tend to believe essence by that he more means totality, right? When he says that, okay, like what is perceived can't at
Mm.
once be comprehended, only what is comprehended can be more deeply perceived. Perception
Hmm.
only solves the problem of phenomena, like your surroundings, the things that happen to you.
Right.
Theory alone can solve the problem of essence,
Problem
right?
of essence.
Right,
Yeah.
the greater context in which your conditions are taking place. I think that's all there is to there. That
Well,
I
Okay.
and
think that's
also
all there is
later
to
later
essence.
later on he even says the essence of things and then puts in quotations the internal relation between one thing and another, right? So
Hmm.
it's like
Right.
what's going on the ground at the moment, I think is
Hmm.
very much
So,
like
well, not just on the ground, right? Like also what
yeah,
stretches through time and how this connects to other similar or
right.
different things. And I think Lenore, to your point, like the totality of all of the relationships that it influences and that are influenced by whatever it is that you're trying to bring analysis to. Okay, I just wanted to make
Mhm.
sure.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
because it's
exactly.
certainly not immutable. I mean, he even says, we read it at the top, like, you eat a pear to understand the pear. That, of course, fundamentally changes its essence. Yeah, but
Hmm. Well, and
Hmm.
I have a
absolutely.
note here that is he has a quote like the dialectical materialist movement of knowledge from perceptual to rational holds true for a minor process of cognition, for instance, knowing a single thing or task, as well as for a major process of cognition, for instance, knowing a whole society or revolution. And I have a note here that says,
Hmm.
I finally understand dialectical materialism, right? You're,
Right.
you're standing in opposition to vulgar rationalism and empiricism and synthesizing the two.
Hmm.
Lenore, what do you mean by vulgar rationalism and empiricism? Just
I vulgar
for listeners
rationalism.
at home.
It's when rationalism calls you a slut.
Yes, yes, I hate when that happens. Actually, I kind of like it, but that's a different conversation.
Right, but
And
yeah,
it's
so
only
yeah,
in understanding the totality that you're actually doing dialectical materialism.
right,
Hmm.
right. Rationalism, of course, in he means in a very literal sense, right? The rational, pure rationalism, right? The reality of reason is all there is. Lived experience is whatever. Empiricism is okay, like experience alone, without theory guiding it. So all of one, all of the other. So following on from that, right? Why is Marxism Leninism true, right? It's not held to be true because it's scientifically formulated by Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, this or that theorist, but because subsequent practice has verified it through the arenas of revolutionary class struggle and revolutionary national struggle. Again, Marx
Which is
synthesized every.
such a bold fucking claim. Obviously,
Mhm.
this develops differently later in the incredibly metaphysical West, but the idea that we grew up with, right, about science is that science exists independently of whoever is observing it. And what Mao is saying is like science can only be conducted by understanding the relational totality that the observation itself and the processes that accompany it change what it is that you're observing as well as changes the observer. And like that's fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's and you have more of a background certainly in philosophy than I do. But I mean it makes sense to me that like
I
okay,
went to
like
acting school. A BFA in acting.
yeah, but what you do
Yeah, we
in your
honestly
spare
need Aisha on the pod. Aisha's the one with the philosophy degree.
yes, yeah, what you do in your spare like I
What you do in your spare Ray, you have no friends. All you do is read theory. Correct.
oh yeah,
Accurate.
the one and only thing you do in your spare time. That's of course what yeah no. So like
Correct.
no, it's a running joke on the show that like I don't understand philosophy, right? Like if I'm
That's
reading
just
something,
you putting yourself down. None of the rest of us say that. That's a running joke you say.
well, no, but I'm reading it. He sets up the dichotomy several times of like theory versus practice and how the two complement each other. And I'm reading this and I'm like, okay. I don't really know how to talk about it without repeating myself.
I mean, you guys gave the subtitle of the show Mouse Touch Grass. If I were to give it a subtitle or a modernized title, I would say The Dialectics of Fucking Around and Finding Out.
Well, yes,
Sure.
exactly.
And that's like kind of it, right?
That's
Well,
sort
and
of.
I think it's also important where he basically is like, don't be afraid to fuck up, right? Like he gets into
Yes.
sometimes people in the party are like, I can't do this job. I've never done it before. I don't know
And
what
he's like,
specific
shut the
job he's
fuck
referring
up,
to.
bitch.
Yep.
And he's like, listen, he's like, okay, so you're gonna fuck up. You're gonna drop in the pit. That's gonna be a gain in your wit, as it says. You are going
Right.
to
He
get
has so
smarter
many
as a result
quippy
of failing.
one-liners.
Yes.
Around the nature of failing as like a portal to future success. And it is the opportunity to sharpen your analytical process to better discern why you failed and to preclude it from happening again.
As Yoda says in as Yoda says in The Last Jedi, the greatest teacher of failure is.
I thought you were gonna say, what did he say in that one Mace Windu book? If no mistake you have made, yet losing you still are, a different game you should play.
Well, you can read the theory. You can read the novelization of Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover. That's got some theory in it. Kind of
100%
does,
not gonna do
actually.
that.
This is
See
true.
our
This is
Revenge of the
true.
Sith episode, folks.
So, when is the movement of human knowledge regarding a certain objective process at a certain stage of development considered complete, right? When do you actually comprehend a situation and you can move forward with a course of action to affect it in an effective way? That point is when a theory is brought in line with objective conditions through practice. See, again, like I have so many notes that like seem to be the same thing, but he's introducing different dichotomies that seem like very, very similar on the surface, but he digs down a little bit into a sort of a different spin on it each time. I'm thinking right now of when he lays out the difference between the two major strains of like incorrect thought you can get when your thinking lags behind reality, right? If you don't advance with changing objective circumstances, you get right opportunism. You assume, okay, like people are like here, they can comprehend like exclusively this method of communication. Therefore, like I should just tail them, right? That's right opportunism, and he presents its opposite here. When you're so far ahead of the consciousness of the people and you're engaging in left phrase mongering, right? You're outstripping the given stage of development of a situation with idealism, with adventurism, alienating yourself from current practice and realities of the day.
I think that that's all theory, though, is that you have to continue to explain things again and again. And this happens in every episode, at least that we've done on Proles with a piece of theory, that it is reiterative. And the reason for this, like, I don't know, I guess if you think about learning something new, right? I mentioned learning Vietnamese. I live in Latin America. I have had to learn Spanish. And when you learn something new, let's say you're learning a new conjugation, a new verb tense, a new something that doesn't exist in your language, you have to practice it over and over and over and over again. And then you practice the verb form as a question, and then you practice it as an imperative, and then you practice it when it's reflexive, and then you practice it, right? And you have to find it from all of these different angles in which you will encounter it in the real world. And it is only when you have observed all of them in the totality, right? Like the piece on practice does the thing that Mao is saying about the structure of language, about the way that we know what we know, about the little individual pieces of data having a qualitative shift to becoming
Yes.
something that is a deeper knowing, right? Like the speech itself does the thing that he's saying learning does. And so, like, of course he has to repeat himself over and over and over again from slightly different facets and from slightly different directions and ways, because it's only through that process that the qualitative individual pieces of data becomes a quantitative shift in your knowing, right? In the same way that it's like, I can practice saying my coffee order at the cafe, but if I show up the next day and it's a different barista and I'm nervous about speaking Spanish and she doesn't understand my accent and I have to say it, like, that maybe is a failure, but that's an opportunity for me to then learn in the hopes that in the future I become a better Spanish language communicator, right? To use like a non-political example.
The sum total of innumerable relative truths can constitute absolute truth.
Mm.
Or, there's that classic saying that you need 10,000 hours of something to have mastery of it because, Malcolm Gladwell, obviously a Maoist. Uh,
Malcolm Gladwell.
You beat me
that's
to
what
it.
I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about. But no, I mean, my beefs with Malcolm Gladwell aside, that is kind of true. Like, you do need to do a thing a lot to be a master of it, and you can't just read about something to be a master of it.
Mhm.
As much as I wish that was the case, I run a literature podcast. Y'all know this. I want to say too that I find this, as we're sort of as we're sort of kind of talking about this in totality, I find this essay to be deeply encouraging once you get through the sort of end of it. It's like,
Yes.
no, like, go for it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's very motivational in this. You will not understand unless you fuck up. You will not understand unless you try. Go outside or do your thing. Meet people, engage with people. Try your best to apply what you know in the real world, and then be teachable and willing to learn. That to me is an
Mm.
extremely encouraging thing. It is not saying, oh, you're a Marxist. If you've read the books, you ought to know how to behave. It's not religious, right? It's not, it's not doing this kind of like biblical, well, if you were a real Christian or if you were a good Christian, you would behave in
Mm.
X, Y, and Z way. It is
Yeah,
saying,
Christians is what
actually,
Christians do.
right. Actually, if you know things, you can try to apply them in the real world, and then you can see how they fit into the conditions, because this is a scientific and sociological process, and that is okay. And just like embrace yourself as a human who's constantly learning, and embrace the beauty of continuing to learn. And I think that is a really cool and encouraging thing, especially for like someone who's like me, who can feel very socially anxious and very like worried that I'm going to fuck things up for everybody. And it's like,
Mhm.
obviously be careful, obviously do your best, but also like go out and try. And that is a
Mhm.
meaningful thing. And that is incredibly encouraging to me.
Yeah, and the
Mao
way and
Zedong coming in with the growth mindset.
Mhm.
That's what
And
I'm
the way that
saying.
he we talked about how, like, yeah, like, this process of cognition applies to like dealing with immediate problems versus like dealing with like things in the macro, right? He relates it very well to like the individual task of a comrade, like scoping out a situation and reporting back with like what you know uh, the best way of moving forward. From that all the way up to war, right? And this is pretty early on in the essay. But he says, if those who lead a war lack experience of war, then yeah, at the initial stage they will not understand the profound laws pertaining to the directing of a specific war. They will suffer many defeats, he says, but this experience enables them to comprehend the inner thread of the whole war, the laws of that specific war, to understand strategy, tactics, consequently to direct the war with confidence. Yeah, Jacob, I agree with you. Like the openness to defeat as a as a teaching tool is something that I think we need to be we need to we need to keep more at the forefront of our mind, because we have a lot of work to do here in the Imperial Core.
But it also requires us to learn from our mistakes and our defeats, right? We
Precisely.
cannot continue to make, we should not continue to make the same mistakes. And we should learn from the failures of our predecessors as well. In like the Western left,
Hmm.
speaking, that is also a meaningful thing to do.
Yeah, so you
Or,
paid all the
we're
pipers.
banging our head against, imagine if like, imagine how absurd it would be to be like me. And I mean, we make there are people like this where I'm like, actually, I'm gonna have to relearn every single piece of science that has ever existed by myself, ever. I'm gonna have to rediscover germ theory by myself, all of that. No, there is existing like successes and failures behind us that we can build on. You have to engage with things in the real world, but like, let's look at like the science that we have, both sociological, political, and literal science, like literal, like day to day science. And let's look at the failures of the left. Why have we not succeeded? Where have we had successes? That is also a meaningful thing to do as we move forward, so that we don't, make the same mistakes on practice, literal practice.
Discover the truth through practice, and again, through practice, verify and develop the truth. Start from perceptual knowledge, actively develop it into rational knowledge, then start from rational knowledge and actively guide it revolutionary practice to change both the subjective and the objective world. Practice, knowledge, again practice, and again knowledge. This form repeats itself in endless cycles, and with each cycle, the content of practice and knowledge rises to a higher level, such as the whole of the dialectical materialist theory of knowledge, and such as the dialectical materialist theory of the unity of knowing and doing. That's how we. That's where he ends it, y'all. With that, and with a sobering and yet encouraging conclusion, the epoch of world communism will be reached when all mankind voluntarily and consciously changes itself and the world. And that's all mankind is a lot of people. But whence the necessity of going out among these people and bringing more and more people into struggle. It's a long road, and like we don't necessarily have a civil war right now to impress upon us the enormity of the problem. We're insulated from several of the problems that the sole imperialist power in the world currently creates. But that makes our task no less pressing.
And in some ways, even more pressing. When the material conditions, right? This is something that we're always kind of jokingly asking and saying on Proles is like, are we accelerationists? And like, obviously, we're not, because accelerationism is like a horrifying mentality. But when the material conditions have not atrophied to the point that the masses are aware of how bad it is. And like, listen, I know you all can hear my accent, but I left the United States almost 20 years ago. I live in a very different context. And so I'm an outsider looking in. And I always want to note that it does seem like US Americans are aware of the fact that things are getting worse, but it seems like on aggregate, they're not really aware both of how much better it can be other places, as well as absolutely how much worse it can get. And to your point about it being even all the more pressing, when the material conditions have not perhaps ripened all the way, it is on us. It is on those of us who have this knowledge, who have the gift of the immortal science, who have the Ariadne string of dialectical and historical materialism, to share with the masses that like there is another way to see this. Because if we can, I mean, I know I was like being a real Eeyore earlier, and now maybe I'm being Delulu and it's not the Solulu. But if more of us can internally raise our consciousness, internally and collectively, I mean, then it doesn't necessarily, we don't like, rock bottom is where you stop digging. Like we get to decide when the crisis point is. We get to decide when we will not tolerate more. And, we're just doing like our small part to encourage people to raise their individual and communal consciousness to the point that we don't have to trash ourselves, our communities, and the entire world before we are ready for a change. Definitely. Or not. Do you think that's bad? Do you think that's not good analysis?
No, I think that's correct.
Cut it. Delete everything I say.
No, I agree with it. So if it's bad analysis, we're on the same page with said analysis. And then the responsibility is on the listener to not listen to bad analysis. That's on you. If we're being stupid, you're the ones bought in. For some reason, y'all are.
And if we're really talking about the dialectic of fucking around and finding out, I think like choosing to raise my consciousness and the consciousness of my community and my comrades like doesn't really have a downside. Like my hypothesis might be wrong and the possibility for revolution might not present itself. But there's really no downside to me learning, to any of us learning.
No. So please reach out to us, comment on our stuff, DM us.
Pascal's it's like Pascal's wager but good. It's like no, hear me out. Hear me out. It's like Pascal's wager, but good. It's like, if you're wrong, if you're wrong, if you're right, hell yeah. And if you're wrong, then you know what? Good shit still happened, and you still did your best, and you still learned something, and you probably made a positive change in your community, even if you did not transform the whole of your society. This is Jacob's wager that I will be introducing. I just stole. I did not come up with it. Ray just came up with it, and I just renamed it after myself. So that's. We can also call it. You can also call it Ray's wager. Sound off whether it's Jacob or Ray's wager.
Please
Regardless,
please do not. You
makes
can have my
makes
wager.
makes
It's the
way
people's
more
wager.
sense. Makes way more sense than Pascal's wager. So, Lenore, is there anything else we want to touch on here? Because I've said my piece.
I think so. Like, even more important than the progression from perceptual to rational knowledge, of yourself, is the leap from rational knowledge to revolutionary practice. And what that looks like in your context is going to vary depending on where you are when you're listening to this. The important thing is that you go out and do it.
Yeah, you fuck around, you find out, and then you change the world.
Lenore, are you saying that we should feel the riverbed by the stones? We should find the stones by putting our feet one at a time?
I actually think we should find the river by
echolocation.
Yes. God, cut that whole thing. Jesus Christ. I was going to.
Fair enough.
Echolocation was a great punchline. Don't cut that.
That was a great bet.
You're right. I was
justice for dolphins.
See, this is what Mao was talking
about.
Is
a moment. Hell yeah.
This is what Mao was talking about. If a bit falls flat, you have to identify why it fell flat.
But it did not fall flat because you had a comrade.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly, Ray. Yes. Yeah.
Also, no bit falls flat that you don't give up on it. It actually gets funnier. If you just stick to your guns. Well, let's see. Well, if that's what we've got to say, Ray, where can hopefully people already know ProlesPod, but if they don't, where can people find you? What should they know about ProlesPod? What's your whole deal?
ProlesPod is a bi-weekly podcast about history, politics, and culture without the liberalism, right? Because we're all Marxist-Leninists. We do episodes on other things like theory, and usually I'm the one who reads that because I don't have friends. That's my only hobby. But it's really good. And also, if you don't know, guys, we're the people who did the Stalin eras, where we have like 22 hours or something of content on the life and lies surrounding Joseph Stalin. So you should go check it out.
It's very interesting stuff. I have to say, we will link that in the show notes. So, and also, of course, folks should go and check out Half the Sky. Both Ray and Lenore are working on that. 3 episodes are out. 1 episode is out on our feed. If you want kind of a teaser, and then you can go over to the other feed. I say it like you can't just go over to the other feed. Doesn't cost anything. So also go over there.
ProlesPod has another episode. Actually, Existing Socialism has another episode. There's a lot of cross promotion going on because we really believe in this, because this is a group effort, and we are very, very excited to see where we can take it.
Hell yeah. Well, how do we want to close this? Lenore, you got anything for us?
What's the Mandarin for touch grass? Well, Google Translate has given me Qingjin Dazuran, which is probably a terrible, terrible pronunciation on my part, but roughly translates to get close to nature. So do that.
Get close to nature is really good.
It's better than touch grass because grass is invasive.
I really like Get Close to Nature. I don't know why that set me so hard, but that's a good place to end it. Thank y'all for listening to this bonus episode of Workers Lit. We will see you next time. Bye.
Take care.
Pages upon pages, words with the form of the worker's brow. Got my nose to the spine, not soaking up all the rhythm of their will now.
When we were recording the bonus episode on Proles last night, Jeremy was trying to explain to me certain conservatives and their rationality for why they think all the kids have turned trans. And it is essentially because they're all dorks who don't get invited to parties. And I said on the podcast, I was like, honestly, I'm pretty sure Lenore is at a party right now. And
It's true.
she goes to a lot of parties, so
I
debunked.
I can confirm I did get invited to more parties like post-transition. Not that I didn't get invited to parties pre, but like, you know, it contributed. Folks,
Okay, so wait, maybe you're reinforcing their belief because it's sort of like I transitioned so that I would be eligible to be invited to more parties.
Which, by the way, is a perfectly valid reason to transition. And more
Yeah, that sounds like a great
Absolutely.
reason to transition.
Lenore's leaving all the shows to start Why I Left the Left.
Why
Yes,
I left
and then
the
I'll-
left to go to a party. Yeah.
That's really the cheat code. Just do a Why I Left the Left thing. Get buckets of money from the Koch brothers. Are they still alive? I don't know if they're still
No,
alive.
just one
Get
of them.
Okay, so you get buckets of money
From the
him,
Koch brother.
and then fund everybody's transition. Yeah.